If you're a fan of Death Note, you're probably familiar with the arguments between the first and second arc of the show. See, one of the biggest problems that long-running television shows often face is a severe drop in the quality of the writing during the show's final seasons. But what about when a show is only one season long, like Death Note? I mean, how could a show with a total of 37 episodes experience the kind of quality drop that usually only affects a show in its 7th to 8th season? Well, let's go for a stroll, and I'll tell you about it. Before I delve into the specifics of the show, the first arc versus the second arc, or my arguments about all of it, let's talk about the background of Death Note and the original Death Note manga. Of course, spoilers for the entirety of Death Note will follow. Death Note follows Light Yagami, a high school student who happens upon a magical notebook called the Death Note. He finds out that writing a person's name in the book while thinking of their face will cause that person to die, and befriends the god of death, or Shinigami, who dropped the notebook into the human world in the first place. Light decides to use the book to create his own perfect world, and begins killing criminals almost immediately. A super smart detective named L decides to try and track Light down, and he very nearly succeeds until Light eventually kills him. Years go by, and Light is eventually tracked down by one of L's successors, a boy named Nier, until he's finally caught and subsequently killed by the very god of death who gave him the notebook to begin with. Let's talk about the background of Death Note's creation. The Death Note manga was originally published in the magazine Weekly Shonen Jump from December 2003 to May of 2006. It consists of 108 total chapters, split up into 12 volumes. In the manga, the detective, L, Light's main rival, dies in chapter 58. The manga then continues for another 50 chapters, with a total of 58 chapters before L's death and 50 chapters after L's death. The anime, which aired from October of 2006 to June of 2007, devotes episodes 1 through 25 to those first 58 chapters, and episodes 26 to 37 to the last 50 chapters. These are commonly referred to as Death Note's first and second arcs. Many viewers and manga fans have pointed out what they believe to be a pretty extreme quality drop after L's death. But the question still remains, why? Well, we don't have any official statements. The next manga that the author of Death Note created might hold some clues. Intriguingly, the writer who created Death Note is anonymous. They go by the pen name Tsugumi Oba, but nobody really knows that much about them. But we can learn some things by studying their work. After finishing Death Note, Oba wrote a manga called Bakuman, a meta-story about a manga writer named Moritaka Mashiro. Within the world of Bakuman, Moritaka is working on a manga called Reversi, a mystery manga about two dueling protagonists who are locked in a battle of wits. Sound familiar? Many readers believe that Bakuman is actually a semi-autobiographical recounting of Oba's own experiences writing Death Note. The protagonists of Reversi have striking similarity to Light and L. Here's where it gets interesting. In Bakuman, Mashiro chooses to end Reversi on a high note, killing off both of his protagonists simultaneously in the ending that he had planned for the manga, despite pressure from his publishers to continue the series and change the ending. If Oba is basing this off their own experiences, then it's very possible that Oba had always planned to end Death Note by killing both Light and L at the same time. But that isn't how Death Note ends. L dies in Volume 7, and the manga then continues for another 5 volumes. If Oba unwillingly continued Death Note beyond its reasonable conclusion, possibly due to pressure by publishers, then it could explain some of the differences in quality between Death Note's first and second arc. Now, due to the amount of differences between the Death Note manga and the Death Note anime, I will be considering the anime entirely separately from the manga. Just to be clear, this video is a review of the anime. Any issues in the anime that might be fixed or changed in the manga will still be considered problems for the purposes of this video. With all that being said, let's get into the reasons that the second arc of Death Note ultimately falls apart. One of the two main protagonists from Death Note is a super intelligent detective and dessert connoisseur, known only to the world as L. L is introduced in episode 2 of Death Note, and arguably he's the fan-favorite character of the show. He quickly shows why he's earned the moniker of the world's greatest detective by narrowing down Kira's location to the Kanto region of Japan and testing the extent of Kira's killing abilities using just one press conference.
So there are some people you can't kill. You've given me a useful hint.
Let me return the favor. I'll tell you something that I think you'll find interesting. Although this was announced as a worldwide broadcast, the truth is, we are only broadcasting in the Kanto region of Japan. I had planned to broadcast this message around the world until we found you, but it looks like that won't be necessary. I now know where you are.
This L guy is pretty good.
Then, starting in episode 9 of the anime, L becomes suspicious enough of Light to confront him personally, and in every episode from episode 9 to episode 25, L and Light interact in person at some point. Now, in my personal opinion, episodes 9 through 25 are some of the strongest episodes of the show, mainly due to those interactions between L and Light. The sense of suspense and intrigue created by even the simplest conversations between L and Light is palpable, and the mind games that the two play with each other are always enjoyable to watch. It always seems that no matter how intelligently Light plays his cards, L gets one step closer to revealing him to be Kira.
I suspect that you, Light Yagami, are in fact Kira. Now, if you still want to ask me something, then please go ahead.
You think I'm Kira?
Well, when I say I suspect you, it's only a 1% possibility.
Of course, in episode 25, Light ultimately wins by forcing the Shinigami known as Rem to kill L for him. However, after L's death, the show decides to introduce two of L's replacements, two boys named Nier and Mello. It is retroactively revealed in episode 27 of the show that L's former orphanage, Whammy House, is actually full of gifted children, and that Nier and Mello were both being groomed to possibly become L's replacement when he retired or was killed during an investigation.
So, which of us did L pick, me or Nier?
He hadn't chosen yet. And now that he's gone, I'm afraid he won't be able to. Mello, listen. You two, Nier. Can't the two of you work together?
All right, sounds good.
It'll never work, Roger. We can't do this together. You know I don't get along with Nier. We've always competed against each other. Always.
Now, unfortunately, this reveal feels unearned, as there are no hints of any kind before episode 27 that Whammy's house is a training ground for gifted children, or that there even are replacements or successors in place for L.
We've always competed against each other.
Consequently, the reveal feels more like a retconning of L's history designed to plausibly introduce a replacement for L, since no ordinary individual could hope to match Light's intellect and craftiness. But, as you'll soon discover is the case for most of the second arc, neither Nier nor Mello really lives up to L. L is cynical, sarcastic, and bitingly clever.
Bang!
What the hell was that?
If I were Kira, you'd be dead, Mr. Soichiro Yagami, chief of the NPA. Yes? Hello?
What do you mean, hello?
Oh, is that you, Light? I guess someone must have dropped this phone in all of the commotion earlier on.
He's an extremely well-written character, and as an audience member, it's easy to root for him. His quirks, from his odd sitting style to his sugar addiction, serve to add dimensions and levity to a character that could easily have been flat and boring. He has flaws that make him interesting and humanize him, such as his emotions drastically swinging when he feels he's not making enough progress on the case, or his willingness to ignore the feelings and ideas of his fellow detectives in his obsessive pursuit of Kira. However, no matter how silly or depressed he acts on the outside, it's always clear that he's several steps ahead of every other character in the show, including, at some points, Light himself. Meanwhile, Mello and Nier's personality traits seem like a half-hearted attempt to recapture L's magic. They're both given quirks in order to copy L. Mello constantly eats chocolate.
Watch the building all...
And Nier uses toys to visualize his investigations. Neither of these quirks is used in a particularly interesting or unique way. Occasionally, Nier will use toys to act out his theories, which would be interesting if Nier's theories didn't feel more like blind luck than good detective work. Mello eats a lot of chocolate. That's really it for him. If he weren't killed by the Death Note, he probably would have died of a cocoa overdose. But these quirks just feel like uninspired attempts to remind the audience how much they liked L. Hey guys, look! These characters are quirky and unique, just like L. See, guys? See? L was also commonly funny.
I would never dream about living in a world without light.
Yes, that would be dark.
which neither Nier nor Mello ever really is. In fact, they both come across surprisingly unlikable. From his introduction, when he callously calls L, the smartest detective ever, a loser.
If you can't win the game, if you can't solve the puzzle, then you're just a loser.
Nier comes across as overconfident and annoying. Meanwhile, Mello is erratic and emotional, with his character flaws dialed up to 11.
You know what? It's fine. Nier should be the one to succeed L. He's not like me. He never gets emotional. He just uses his head like it's a game or a puzzle.
He gets angry about the smallest things, and uses insanely violent and unhinged plans to try and catch Kira, putting many people in very real danger despite it being completely unnecessary. These characters simply can't recreate L's unique and fun blend of character traits and flaws.
It looks like I'm still fighting L after all this time.
Right. Sure you are. Now, some people might say I'm being unfair here. After all, neither Nier nor Mello really get the chance to assert their character, or have any particularly fun dynamics with Light, as the only time that Light interacts with either one in person is in the show's finale, when he meets Nier in a warehouse just prior to his final downfall. And I agree. The decision to never have Light personally interact with Nier and Mello is, in my opinion, a bad one, and it significantly hurts the second arc. One of the things that endears L is the way he interacts with Light. The fact that his conversational tactics are always designed to try and learn more about Light makes every conversation exciting, as L constantly attempts to confirm his initial suspicion that Light is Kira. So, how does Nier come to the conclusion that Light is Kira? Well, it happens in episode 30, just 3 episodes after his introduction to the show.
To the members of the Japanese task force, was there ever a point in the investigation where the second L was suspected to be Kira, even if the suspicions were later dropped?
Instead of watching him slowly piece together his suspicions, as L does in episodes 1 through 8, he figures it out extremely quickly. The exciting dynamic of L and Light is replaced by the significantly more boring Light versus Nier dynamic, one which suffers from both a lack of interaction between the two characters, and mundane and boring dialogue whenever the two actually end up talking.
We've re-established a secure connection, so I thought I should give you a call to let you know.
You're safe. That's a relief.
To all of you on the task force, I'm sure that by now some of you are starting to suspect that Kira may be one of you. Given the timing of today's attack on our headquarters, I don't think anyone could blame you for having doubts. If you don't suspect the second L of being Kira by now, you're in the wrong line of work.
While Mello offers a slightly more interesting dynamic than Nier, his screen time is often cut way too short, and his interactions with Light are virtually non-existent. Another thing that hurts Nier and Mello is the way that the quality and the complexity of characters' plans and ideas sharply decreases in the second arc as compared to the first. Which, of course, brings me to my next main point: the overall complexity of the first arc versus the second arc. One thing that makes the first arc of Death Note so good is the intricate, complex, and extremely well thought out plans that Light and L make and set in motion against each other. From Light's potato chip plan in episode 8,
I'll take a potato chip and eat it.
to his elimination of Ray Penber and Naomi Misura in episodes 5 and 7, the tactics are intelligent and cunning. Meanwhile, L's announcement plan in episode 2 and his multitude of traps set out for Light, starting in episode 9, are equally as enjoyable to discover and watch unfold. Finally, Light's memory erasure plan, which spans episodes 16 to 24, is a true work of genius, and probably my favorite writing in all of Death Note. The first arc of Death Note is filled to the brim with exciting and engaging plans. However, the second arc of Death Note features a distinct lack of interesting or exciting plans. When Mello kidnaps the chief of the Japanese police, there's no subterfuge, no outsmarting, no intelligence at all. Just a kidnapping and a ransom. The smartest part of Mello's plan is to put the Death Note on a missile and fire it, which is a good plan, but not close to the level of L's ideas. Now, unfortunately, Light's plans also take a pretty dramatic drop in complexity. Light's master plan to kill L in arc number 1 was to erase his memories, erase Misa's memories, give his note to a random business executive, and then trust that even without his memories, he would track that person down. Light knew himself so well that he expected he would eventually solve the case, touch the Death Note, and regain his memories. He even knew he'd still be wearing a watch with a piece of the Death Note in it, which allowed him to quickly and subtly kill the businessman, and then have Misa start killing again. He cleared himself of suspicion using fake rules that he added to one of the Death Notes, and he eventually forced a Shinigami named Rem into doing his killing for him by manipulating the fact that she cared deeply for Misa. It was a genius, cold-hearted, and ultimately amazing plan to watch play out over the course of those 8 episodes. In arc number 2, Light's master plan to kill Nier was to have a bunch of people break into his building and drag him out onto the street, so that Light could write Nier's name in his Death Note, or simply let Nier be killed by the mob. This feels like the stupidest plan in the show, but it is not nearly as stupid as Nier's counterplan of throwing a bunch of money at the people trying to break into his building and hoping they'll get distracted. And of course, that plan works. And the people who are supposedly religiously devoted to the cause of Kira give up instantaneously, because Nier always gets stupidly lucky. Oh, have I mentioned that Nier always gets stupidly lucky? No? Well, let me tell you about it. Nier ends up receiving a ridiculously high amount of free information, including Mello telling Nier about Shinigami and fake rules.
The Killer Notebook. It belongs to a Shinigami. Whoever touches it is able to see a god of death.
The notebook I obtained had previously belonged to another Shinigami, perhaps even Kira himself. Also, some of the rules written inside are actually fake. That's all I can tell you for now.
Nier happening to see Teru Mikami in some videos and deciding that he's definitely ex-Kira.
El Kira is Light Yagami. Could ex-Kira be Teru Mikami? Everything seems to fit into place.
Which, outlandishly, he's right about. Oh, and of course, Mikami decides to go to the bank and get the real Death Note, revealing the fact that Nier's Death Note is a fake on the night before what would have been Nier's untimely death.
Do you understand now, Light Yagami? You didn't realize that Mikami made a move on his own and wrote Takada's name in his notebook, because you had already killed her using a notebook clipping yourself. This was the event that made me consider the possibility of a fake notebook.
In the first arc, L meticulously plans out each step of his investigation, slowly bleeding information from Light through the use of his superior intellect. A good example of this is his deductive reasoning test from episode 10. The test is designed to trick the real Kira by giving Light a puzzle with 3 notes, then claiming that there were actually 4 notes and that Light failed to deduce that. The genius of L's plan is that in reality, there were only 3 notes. But if Light had shown too much emotion, he would have immediately revealed that he knew the 4th note was a fake, thus exposing himself as Kira. However, by assuming that there were only 3 notes initially, Light still made himself slightly more suspicious, as the real Kira would never ask about additional notes, knowing that there were only 3. The scene is a wonderful testament to the brilliance of L's deductive mind. But in the second arc, Nier is handed all the information he needs on a silver platter, by chance, luck, or sheer plot convenience. The plans are boring, and are usually extremely simplistic. Mello's plans range from kidnapping to kidnapping, while Nier's plans are to wait for someone to Deus Ex Machina him all the information he needs. Light's plans in the second arc, if they can even be called that, are all pretty awful. He decides to have a female friend of his, Kaomi Takada, help him as an accomplice. His brilliant plan to communicate with her discreetly is to meet with her in a hotel room. So, being the genius that he is, Light decides to pass her notes. Does he bring a notepad, you ask? No. Light is so smart that he uses the notepad that's already in the hotel room, which leads to one of the key clues that is used to prove that he is Kira. Actually, Light does have one good plan in the second arc. His final plan in the show. It's actually one of his best. However, even that plan is unfortunately ruined by the plot conveniences of the second arc. And it fails due to some incredibly bad luck for Light and good luck for Nier. No surprise there, but this does bring me to my next point. Light's final plan, and how it creates the most unsatisfying part of Death Note's entire second arc. The finale. Oh boy. Light's final plan to kill all the remaining members of the Kira investigation team is fairly simple, but much more complex than most of the plans throughout the second arc. Light finds out that Teru Mikami, the person doing his killings for him, is being followed by one of Nier's investigators, and he hatches a final plan. Light and the remaining members of the Kira task force will meet Nier and his entire investigation team in person, and Mikami will kill them all. Except, of course, for Light. Now, knowing that Mikami is being followed, Light instructs him to secretly switch his own real Death Note for a fake Death Note. The real Death Note is stored safely in a bank vault, although Light has no idea where Mikami has put it. Meanwhile, Mikami texts the names of people that he's killing with the fake Death Note to someone in possession of a real Death Note, who then kills them immediately, seemingly proving to the investigators that Mikami's Death Note is completely real. The plan works, and once Nier's team believes Mikami's Death Note to be real, Mikami allows the investigators to swap out his fake Death Note for their own fake Death Note. At this point, all that's left for Mikami to do is wait until the day of the meeting and then retrieve his own safely stored real Death Note. He can take it to the meeting between Light and Nier and write down the names of every investigator in the room except for Light, killing them all with his real Death Note. Nier will even allow this to happen, believing that there's no danger at all because the Death Note has been switched with a fake. It's a brilliant and well thought out plan, designed to ensure Light's foolproof victory once and for all.
Exactly as planned.
But it fails.
Damn it!
So, why does it fail? This plan seems to have been thought out quite extensively. Is it because of some brilliant planning on Nier's part? Does he outsmart Light through some insanely complex plan that anticipated the possibility of a fake Death Note? That would be cool, right? No. This is the second arc. We can't have nice things. Light's plan fails because Mello randomly decides to kidnap Takeda, and Mikami's IQ subsequently drops to 0. So, let me set the stage. We're in episode 35, just before the final confrontation between Light and Nier. Mikami has convinced the investigator following him that he is the real Death Note instead of a fake. The investigator has switched the Death Notes, and Nier now believes that Mikami will bring a fake Death Note to the meeting. However, unbeknownst to Nier, Mikami will actually be getting the real Death Note from his bank vault, thus successfully killing Nier and all the other investigators who know about Kira's true identity. Then, out of nowhere, Mello surprisingly kidnaps Takeda, the woman who Light was writing notes with. Uh-oh. Now Takeda has a small piece of the Death Note on her, and she uses it to kill Mello. Problem solved. At that point, she calls Light, and by his instructions, she begins killing criminals using her piece of the note. Light then decides that she's no longer useful to him, and covers up the fact that she killed Mello by killing her with his own piece of the Death Note. He uses his piece to specify that Takeda will commit suicide by setting herself and her surroundings on fire, leaving no evidence. This is a perfectly solid, if not spectacular, solution to get rid of Takeda and Mello simultaneously. So why does this ruin Light's plan? Because, once again, by sheer chance, at the exact moment that Light is writing the cause of Takeda's death in his note, Mikami is writing the exact same cause of death in his real copy of the Death Note. That's right. I want you to understand how unfathomably stupid this occurrence is. Mikami, a character that we've been told by the show is extremely intelligent, who knows that he's being followed, who knows that Light specifically told him not to make any unnecessary moves, and who follows an extremely strict and exact routine every day, and should be well aware that breaking that routine even just a little bit would raise Nier's suspicions, decides to break his routine just before Light's final plan would be completed, lead anyone who is following him directly to his real Death Note, and then put that note back in the bank vault where it could easily be stolen by one of Nier's investigators, and then go home.
Mikami. I can definitely use him. It seems I was right to choose him for this. He understands Kira's beliefs and ideals perfectly, and he knows what Kira wants and doesn't want. Thanks to that, he takes action without needing my orders.
Of course, he just so happens to try and kill Takeda using the exact same cause of death that Light writes down. If either of them had written a different cause of death, it would have quickly become apparent to either Light or Mikami that the other one had used his Death Note. Had Mikami done nothing, the plan would have worked perfectly. Had Mello not decided to suddenly kidnap Takeda, the plan would have worked perfectly. However, Every circumstance goes wrong for Light, and on top of that, one of NieR's investigators is able to create an identical forgery of Mikami's real Death Note in under 12 hours.
But as for the real one, we replaced the entire thing. This notebook here is actually the real one.
No! Impossible!
We used the same kind of pen that Mikami used, copied his handwriting perfectly, and made both the inside and the outside of our fake look exactly like the original. Giovanni was able to do it in a single night.
So that Mikami doesn't notice that his Death Note isn't the real one. I'll actually link a video in the description of this one, where a YouTuber breaks down why forging Mikami's Death Note in under 12 hours is
impossible!
But for now, let's just ignore that. Finally, Mikami doesn't even think to test the Death Note in any way on the day he plans to use it to enact Light's final master plan, even though he has been shown to be an extremely careful and meticulous person. He knows he went to the bank vault. He knows he was being followed. He knows that if his Death Note is a fake, then Light's plan fails, and it all comes crashing down. So he does not test the Death Note at any point in any way on his way to the warehouse. Would have taken 5 seconds. Just write a name. Test it. Nah. So, all of these circumstances aligned perfectly in NieR's favor, allowing him to find out about Light's plan, foil it, and reveal that Light is Kira. This is not because NieR did something intelligent. It is not because of a brilliant plan. It is because Mello did something extremely convenient, and Mikami did something extremely idiotic. Oh, and one more interesting thought to chew on. If NieR had not gotten extremely lucky, he would have led literally the entire Kira investigation team and everyone who knew that Light was Kira into a death trap and gotten all of them killed, including himself.
If you can't win the game, if you can't solve the puzzle, then you're just a loser.
But hey, L's the real loser. I'd like to mention as part of my final thoughts that it doesn't really matter to me how the show ends. It'd be fine if Light had won, or if L had won, or if both of them had died. At the end of the day, Death Note is still an iconic series. Regardless of the second arc's shortcomings, the show is one of the best animes of all time, and one of my personal favorites. Light, L, Chief Yagami, and a multitude of other characters combine to create a suspenseful, entertaining, and overall thrilling experience for 25 episodes. I fully recommend that anyone who has never seen Death Note watch the first 25 episodes. If you want to see the story concluded, feel free to watch the rest of the episodes. But be prepared for a massive drop in quality after L's death. Maybe, in another universe, Tsugumi Ohba got to finish his manga the way he wanted to. Maybe there's a world where Light and L died together, poetically locked together in their endless battle of wits. But in our world, we have to watch 12 episodes of a mediocre shadow of the anime that Death Note was. And that's a shame.